There's a secret behind my mother's silence, a secret that changed everything, but I didn't understand it until years later. It all started with a faded photograph tucked away in an old drawer, a picture I wasn't supposed to see. Have you ever felt so invisible in your own home? Like you were nothing more than a shadow passing through walls meant to protect you? Like the people who brought you into this world forgot you existed? If you're going through something like this right now, comment the number 1 so I know I'm not alone. Like this video if you've ever felt invisible inside your own home. Subscribe if you believe that even forgotten stories deserve to be heard. My name is Lorelei, and for most of my life, I thought my mum loved me. But the truth was, buried beneath years of silence, coldness, and a distance that no hug could cross. My mom, Evelyn, was a woman who everyone saw as warm and strong, but at home she was distant like a ghost who shared my house but not my heart. She worked 2 jobs, came home exhausted, and spoke to me with the kind of politeness reserved for strangers. Conversations were short, smiles were rare, and love, real love, felt like a memory from someone else's life. I tried so hard to be perfect. I kept my grades up, stayed out of trouble, and said nothing when I was hurting. But nothing changed. One night, after my first heartbreak, I sat at the dinner table, my voice cracking as I told her everything. She nodded politely like I was a stranger telling a stranger a story and quickly changed the subject. That night, I cried alone in my room, swallowed by a silence that screamed, "You don't matter." Friends told me, maybe she's just tired, or some moms don't know how to show love. But I knew this was something else, something broken. Then came the moment I'll never forget. During a family gathering, when my achievements were ignored but my brother was showered with praise, I finally spoke up. "Why am I invisible to you?" I asked. Her eyes went cold. She looked right through me and said, "Maybe if you weren't so difficult, I'd notice you more." That one sentence shattered me. I remember the sting of it, like a slap to the face, not physical, but worse. It wasn't just words. It was a verdict, a condemnation, a declaration that I was the problem. I shut down. I disappeared into myself, trying to make that pain go away. But what she didn't know was that those words didn't silence me, they lit a fire. A fire I didn't understand until years later, because what happened after that night changed everything. It started when I accidentally found that faded photograph in her old drawer, a picture of a younger woman holding a baby who wasn't me. That photo held a story she never told, a story of loss, regret, and heartbreak that explained the walls she built around her heart. Sometimes the loudest wars are fought in silence, and sometimes that silence hides a secret that can either destroy you or set you free. Will I ever break that silence with my mom? Or are we doomed to live apart, trapped by walls we built ourselves? Stay with me. This story isn't over. After that night, the silence between Mom and me grew heavier, like a fog settling over every room in the house. I tried to piece together the cracks in our relationship to understand what had gone wrong. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized the truth wasn't just about me. It was about a betrayal I never saw coming. Mom wasn't just distant because she was tired. She was protecting something, or maybe someone. The faded photograph I found wasn't just a forgotten memory. It was a secret that held the key to everything. I discovered that before I was born, Mom had a different life, a life she buried deep, like a wound she refused to let heal. That baby in the picture was my half-sister, someone she gave up, someone she never told me about. At first, I wanted to understand. I wanted to forgive. I believed love could heal all wounds. But as I searched for answers, I found only more silence and coldness. Whenever I asked about that chapter of her life, she shut me down. There was no explanation, no apology, just silence and sideways looks. It was as if my very presence reminded her of a pain she wasn't ready to face. With every unanswered question, I felt myself slipping further away from her like we were two strangers trapped in the same house. The hardest part wasn't just the secret itself, it was how Mum treated me once I stumbled upon it. Suddenly, I wasn't the daughter she'd pretended to love. I was a living reminder of a past she wanted to bury. She stopped attending my soccer games, stopped asking how school was going. If I spoke up, she snapped sharp words and icy tones that cut deeper than any argument. One night, after I told her about a scholarship opportunity I'd worked hard for, she laughed in my face. "You think you deserve that? After all the trouble you've caused?" she sneered. I sat frozen, the words hitting me like stones thrown at my heart. How could the woman who was supposed to support me treat me this way? Her cruelty became a daily storm. She criticized my clothes, my friends, my choices, as if every decision I made was wrong in her eyes. I was drowning in a sea of disappointment and rejection. One particular evening haunts me to this day. After a particularly vicious fight, where she accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, I locked myself in my room, trembling. Tears blurred my vision, but the quiet of the house was deafening. I screamed inside my head, but no one heard. That night, loneliness wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. I was trapped in a family where love felt conditional and fragile, where mistakes were punished with cold indifference. Days turned into weeks. The emotional wounds deepened. I felt like a ghost, wandering a home that no longer felt like mine. I began to realize that if I stayed, I would be consumed, swallowed whole by the bitterness and silence. That's when I made the hardest decision of my life. One night, after another bitter argument, where she said I was too difficult to love, I quietly packed a small bag. No dramatic goodbyes, no pleas for understanding, just the quiet resolve to leave. I wasn't running away from my family. I was running toward freedom, toward a chance to breathe, to find my own voice, and maybe, someday, to heal. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people you love to save yourself. Leaving the house that night was both the hardest and the most freeing thing I ever did. I stepped out into a world that suddenly felt enormous and terrifying. No familiar walls, no warmth from a mother's embrace, just the cold bite of uncertainty. For weeks, I drifted through the city like a ghost, couch surfing at friends' places, taking odd jobs wherever I could find them. Some days, I barely had enough money for food, and the exhaustion weighed down every movement. The nights were the worst, lonely and silent, filled with memories that haunted me like relentless shadows. I remember one particularly brutal night, curled up in a tiny corner of a friend's crowded apartment, feeling completely invisible. The noise around me was a blur, but inside, the loneliness was deafening. I questioned everything. Was I selfish for leaving? Would I ever be able to build a life worth living? The tears I cried that night felt endless, as if my heart was breaking in slow motion. But slowly, amidst the chaos, something inside me began to change. It began with small, almost imperceptible moments. A genuine smile from a stranger, a kind word from a co-worker, the comforting sound of rain against a window. These tiny threads started weaving a fragile tapestry of hope around me. At a local community center, I stumbled upon a free writing workshop. That's where I met Maya. She was vibrant, full of life, and carried an energy that felt contagious. But what mattered most was the way she looked at me, not with pity or judgment, but with genuine curiosity and warmth. For the first time, I felt seen. Maya became more than just a teacher. She became a mentor and a friend. She helped me find a part-time job at a small, dusty bookstore tucked away on a quiet street. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was modest, but the routine gave me something I hadn't had in a long time: stability. The bookstore became my sanctuary. Rows of books whispered stories of hope, resilience, and triumph. Every day I spent there, shelving books or helping customers, I felt myself slowly rebuilding from the inside out. Life was no longer just about surviving. It was about growing. At night, I poured my soul onto paper, writing stories that no one else would read. Writing became my therapy, a way to wrestle with the pain, to hold on to the hope that maybe one day I could tell my truth without fear. Months turned into seasons. I started to believe in myself again. The girl, crushed by rejection, was learning to stand tall. The wounds didn't vanish, but they no longer defined me. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maya handed me a letter with a smile. It was an invitation to share my writing at a local literary event. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and terror. The thought of speaking my story aloud to strangers was daunting, but it ignited a spark inside me, a flicker of courage. This invitation was more than just a chance to heal. It was the first step in reclaiming my voice and rewriting my story. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with fears and doubts, but for the first time in a long time I felt ready to face the silence I'd left behind and to turn my pain into strength. Because sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns, and sometimes the greatest battles we fight are the ones that lead us back to ourselves. Years had passed since I left that house, the place that once held my pain, my silence, my broken dreams. I had grown into someone my younger self could barely recognize as stronger, louder, unbreakable. The day I returned wasn't subtle. It was at a packed community event celebrating local artists and writers. The room buzzed with anticipation, and I was the headline speaker, an honor I'd worked hard to earn. As I stepped onto the stage, my eyes scanned the crowd, and there she was, Evelyn, my mother, her face pale, eyes wide with shock and maybe fear. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected me to come back, let alone standing there, speaking with confidence, telling my truth in front of everyone. When my speech ended, applause thundered through the hall. I looked at her, steady and unflinching. "Why did you hide my sister from me?" I demanded, voice calm but fierce, eyes locking with hers. The room fell silent. Her lips trembled. "I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" I echoed. "By pretending I didn't exist? By tearing me down and ignoring me?" Her composure shattered. Tears spilled down her cheeks as murmurs rippled through the crowd. But the real shock came after. As whispers spread, someone handed me a file documents revealing how my mother had secretly drained family funds to cover debts from a gambling problem she hid for years. The betrayal cut deeper than words. In front of everyone, my mother was exposed not just as distant or cold, but as someone who had betrayed us all. I watched her crumble, the woman who once held all my pain, now faced with the consequences of her actions. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. The weight of years of silence and suffering began to lift, replaced by a fierce sense of justice. But the night wasn't over. From the back of the room, my brother stepped forward, holding a letter he'd written explaining his own struggles, his silent fight to hold the family together while the secrets tore us apart. The crowd listened as he spoke of pain, forgiveness, and hope. In that moment, I realized revenge wasn't about breaking hair, it was about breaking free from silence, from pain, and choosing to rewrite our story. The battle was far from over, but the war inside me had changed. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't crushing your enemies. It's choosing compassion over hatred and courage over fear. After the storm of confrontation and truth, the house I once fled still stood, but something inside me had changed forever. The girl who had run away, broken and lost, was gone. In her place was a woman who had wrestled with pain, faced betrayal, and learned to rise beyond it all. Returning to that house after years felt like standing at a crossroads. Should I rebuild the broken bridges or burn them to ash and walk away forever? Mom reached out, hesitantly at first. Her voice trembled as she asked for forgiveness, for a chance to mend what had been torn apart by years of silence and misunderstanding. But forgiveness isn't a gift you grant lightly. It's earned, and it starts with healing yourself. I realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing the pain. It was about freeing myself from the chains of bitterness and anger. It was about reclaiming my peace, whether or not she was ready to change. We began attending therapy sessions together. Slowly, step by step, word by word, we rebuilt trust that once seemed impossible to recover. We learned to listen without judgment, to speak our truths without fear. Healing wasn't a straight path. Some days were heavy with old wounds reopening. Some nights I lay awake questioning if I could ever truly move past the hurt. Yet every moment of doubt was met with a quiet strength growing inside me, a strength born from the courage to choose peace over pain, love over resentment. I learned that family isn't always perfect, and love isn't always easy, but the courage to face darkness, to seek light, even when it feels far away, that is what makes us whole. Today, Mom and I still have our moments. Imperfect human moments filled with missteps and misunderstandings. But the silence that once swallowed us has been replaced by honest conversations, tears shared, and laughter rediscovered. Most importantly, I found my voice not just in writing but in living unapologetically as myself. I realized that my story, with all its pain and triumphs, has value. If there's one thing my journey taught me, it's this. Sometimes, the greatest healing comes not from changing others, but from choosing how we respond to pain. We all carry scars, some visible, some hidden, but those scars can be the maps that guide us toward freedom, toward healing, toward a life where we no longer let past wounds dictate our future. So, whether you're healing from betrayal, heartbreak, or silence, know this: your voice matters. Your story matters. You deserve peace. What would you do if this happened to you? Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away forever? Let me know your thoughts. Your story matters too. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to support this channel. Your engagement helps bring more real stories to light and connects us all in healing. Thank you for listening. You are never alone.